The Night King Who Returned with a God. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. Upon returning to Earth, Leon had 3 goals. First, he wanted to spread the faith since there are no true gods here. If Jehovah, Buddha, Allah, and the countless devas the Hindus speak of were real, at least some of their saints would have joined the fight against the demons. But there were no priests or saints endowed with divine powers, whether cardinals, priests, or fanatics chanting Allahu Akbar in the 2030s. By its very nature, the destruction of demons requires the most powerful force of all, holy power, and yet not a shred of that power exists. There are no gods that transmit divine power to the priests of cathedrals and mosques. In essence, God gives His grace through faith. If you think about what happened in the plains of Hunan right now, the concept of the land being polluted and a bad year coming is wrong. How can a land that has been worshipped and blessed by the goddess of life and abundance be polluted? And how can the god of rain and clouds send down rain? And how can there be a bad year? Just look at the crops. Rice, which has been improved and grown with the best technology of the 21st century, cannot cure even a small tumor inside the body. Does it make sense to expect people to go through the barbaric practice of healing in hospitals instead of sanctuaries because they can't cure a single tumor? The problem is getting sick in the first place. If they had been eating the crops Demira had blessed, they could not have gotten sick. Healing is reserved for soldiers wounded on the battlefield or cursed by evil cultists. To harness holy power, Leon had to spread the faith. Leon managed to deal with the issue in Hunan Plains using the holy power he had, but for what was to come, he would need great power. His world ultimately fell to the demons because there were no more believers. The second was the rebuilding of the Holy Knights. In this world, there is no group that fights using holy power. If the Grail Guardian, the Lionheart King, is a demigod, the Holy Knights are the next level below him, living saints. They are the knights of the gods who use the holy law. They fought to the last man, and as they ascended, their holy power kept Leon alive. The Holy Knights of Ariana, the goddess of light and justice. Sir Jenkins, the guardian of the sea, who guarded the harbor and served Poma, the god of the sea and waves. Sir Genoa, knight of the flame, who served Pedos, the god of war and fire. Anak, a holy maiden who supported the knights with the light of Demera, the goddess of life and fertility. As empires crumbled along with the great forests of the elves and the underground cities of the dwarves, the holy knights continued to slay demons. They were the terror of the demons. The third purpose was to annihilate the evils that installed themselves upon this land. He had to restore divinity by spreading faith and to train holy knights in the harmony and order of a proper pantheon. Perhaps it's too much to hope for superpowered saints called holy knights to emerge from the lowly unbelievers and ignorant commoners. However, Leon Dragonia Lionheart will do what he had to do. Your Majesty, there is someone who has duly requested an audience. If the formalities have been followed, there is no reason why I shouldn't meet him. Leon guessed who it was and allowed him to come. Director Park Jong-chan realized that the survivor named Leon was very much like him. The way the man from the barbarian civilization acted like he was royalty and puffed himself up was a bit much for him, a modern-day Earth aristocrat. But apart from that, he coveted Leon's abilities. He could make crops grow in an instant, but they were still fit for human consumption. What's more, his powers are not ordinary. Curing cancer is one thing, but when he found out that Leon can also clean up land contaminated with miasma, he was blown away. This is a man we must have in our company. Thank you for allowing me to meet with you, Your Majesty. For the sake of corporate profits, he bowed to the barbarian for a moment. This is a small gift from my company to Your Majesty. Accompanied by his secretaries, he presented the gift to Leon. It was a weapon closet made by a master craftsman from the Dujong Guild, one of the top 10 guilds in Korea. Jong-chan planned to dazzle the barbarian with the splendor of the finest goods inside. Once you taste it, you'll never go back. I'll make you beg me to let you join our company. Mr. Park was looking forward to the reaction of Han Hari and Leon, who would be stunned by the enormity of the gift. But, okay, I'll take you up on your offer. You'll take it? What's with that attitude? It's like I'm the one who has to accept it. The arrogance made Mr. Park's teeth chatter, but he managed to keep a business smile on his face. Why don't you check it out? I'm sure you'll like it. Tsk. I can't be bothered to explain manners to an inferior being. Han Hari, open it. Leon insists that Hari open the gift, trying to make him feel even more annoyed. Hari immediately unwrapped it and swallowed hard. What is this? The neatly made closet expanded to reveal a weapons display with dozens of items on the shelves. These are the latest and greatest from our group. I hope you can pick out whatever you like. These are unique grade armor made by the Dujong Guild's own master. These were unique grade armor made by the Dujong Guild, a top 10 Korean guild controlled by the Dujong Group. They were so expensive that even high-ranking hunters would go out of their way to get them, even if they didn't have the money. I heard that you're going to be a hunter in the future, so these items will be of great help to you. Hearing those words, Hari found it difficult to breathe. The armors crafted by the Dujong Guild's master craftsmen were ultra-luxury items that cost $1 billion each. Unless you were lucky enough to get one in the gate, it was one of the finest things you could ever acquire through normal means. Hari swallowed hard at the sight of the unique sword, which she had only seen on a video throughout her time at the academy. What am I supposed to use such a lowly weapon for? Lowly? Your Majesty, what do you mean, lowly? Leon's demeanor stunned Hari. Even though he was an otherworlder, how could he have such an attitude when he saw this pamphlet's picture? These are top-of-the-line items manufactured from compressed alloys using the most advanced magical engineering techniques. You can't get anything like this anywhere else. Mr. Park was trying to explain how much technology had been applied to the items he had brought and how expensive the materials were. Even the most savage of savages could understand what he was talking about. But Leon had a different perspective. How can you make a great sword that is not bathed in the light of the stars or blessed by the gods, and your armor is only used to hunt beasts? What does he mean? He wants us to dry the weapons in the sun like pepper and recite a prayer or something. Unknown to him, he was right on the money. Anyway, compared to my holy sword and holy spear, they're just toys. Tsk, tsk. How dare you bring something that hasn't even been blessed? You barbarian. Every survivor thinks that their world is the best. The dwarves as a craftsman race had a lot of pride, but their pride crumbled before the materials and metallurgy of modern civilization. No matter how many times a dwarven master forged a steel sword, it would bend before a normal longsword forged in a factory with modern technology and magical engineering. Ha, ha. You must be very confident in your sword, Your Majesty. I was merely stating the obvious. Leon summoned a sword from nowhere. Subspace magic? But I didn't sense any magical energy. It was an old iron sword that was missing a tooth here and there, worn out and unable to cut anything. Zhongchan wanted to ask what he could do with such a piece of junk, but when his gaze met Leon, he was speechless. You are full of distrust in this king. Oh, you misunderstand. It's not uncommon for merchants to bring me things. It's like using a cattle prod for a chicken, but I'll show you what I can do. Although thrilled, Mr. Park was troubled. Should I show him the difference in power and crush his confidence, or should I give him a modest defeat and make him feel good? How dare they devalue the Dujong Group's technical capabilities? Mr. Park felt he needed to take the initiative. Barbarian, I'll show you what real technology is. He couldn't help but smile as he continued. In that case, I'd like to sample the brilliance of Your Majesty's sword. Eh, Deputy Han Hari? Yes. Would you like to try out any of the armaments that catch your fancy? Hari glanced at Leon, and when he nodded, she gripped the sword she'd admired for 4 years, the Dawnbreaker of Master Park Jin Cheol. It had been forged for 10 days in a special gate, bathed in the intense energy of the sun, and its strength was unparalleled. Its special ability, sunlight, has the melting power to melt even the strongest special alloys, and with her fire blessing, it's a perfect match. Can I really wield this? Why bother asking an adult's permission to wield a toy? That asshole is going all the way to... Mr. Park's fever seemed to reach the top of his head, but he waited for the refreshing cider that was just around the corner. Holding her dream weapon, she admired it, and worried that Leon's weapon might break, but she couldn't do anything about it. She activated the Dawnbreaker special function, and the blade turned red as a fierce energy enveloped him. Then, here we go! The sword she swung with all her might collided with Leon's old iron sword, with the result being, bang! Hari's sword broke. Huh? Hari, Mr. Park, and the secretary shook their heads while Leon was the only one with a free expression as he looked at the severed sword. You really did bring something useful as a toothpick. Put it away. What the hell is going on? Mr. Park's head was spinning at what was happening in front of him. The Dawnbreaker was a weapon of supreme cutting power that could easily cut through the hides and bones of high-level monsters. It was the most powerful weapon they could create, containing the essence of the Dujong Group's technology. That is a high-grade weapon. That old sword, no way. Survivors would occasionally bring over the world's best weapon, a high-grade weapon, but it was still the best they could do. An old, toothless sword like that couldn't possibly be such a weapon. I'll cut your time short. You have 3 minutes to finish what you have to say. Ah, no, that. No? This was supposed to be a steamroller. But how did this happen? Mr. Park tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out of his mouth, and it wasn't until his secretary shook his shoulder that he finally came to his senses. Yeah, gifts are just a way to buy goodwill. It's a shame that a billion-dollar weapon was destroyed, but that's not what matters now. Leon, your majesties, what kind of courtesy is it for a lowly tradesman to speak of this king's dignity? Ugh, your majesty. His clenched teeth made a sound like they were about to crack. He had never been so disrespected and belittled in his life. Your Majesty, Dujong Group would like the exclusively purchase the rice you grew. The crops that I grew? Did you think I was a farmer? No. We just want to secure the seeds of the crops that His Majesty has allowed to grow in the Hunan Plains and grow them ourselves. You're going to convert? That's the most pleasant thing to come out of your mouth. What? What the hell do you mean, convert? That crop grows in a land blessed by priests who serve the gods of life and fertility. You intend to become one of those priests. I see you're quite ambitious for such a frivolous subject. Oh no, that's not it. Huh? Finding it difficult to follow Leon's words, Zhongchan saw no point in continuing, so he went straight to the point. We want to take over the patent rights to the seeds of that rice. Excuse me? Leon's eyes sharpened and Mr. Park hastened to add a condition. Of course it will come at a price. By our management's calculations, it was thought to be worth 180 billion won. It was a steal, of course. There's no way the seeds of a super rice that can cure cancer are worth only 180 billion won. But if he explained the value of 180 billion won to this ignorant barbarian, his eyes would probably roll. You mean you want to buy seeds with money? That's right, of course. But you'll have to sign a contract stating that only Dujong Future Foods can distribute it exclusively. Oh, and if you want, I can raise the price a bit more, depending on the negotiations. Mr. Park was looking forward to seeing how he could toy with this barbarian, undervalue the seeds, act as if he had nothing to lose, and bamboozle him with difficult explanations of the law and complicated distribution networks. As a natural businessman, Zhongchan had a knack for devaluing his opponents and adding to his own value. But how dare this lowly businessman blaspheme the divine? He didn't know that in front of him was standing the representative of all divinity and the most devout religious man. The Night King Who Returned with a God. Chapter 13. Medieval Taxation. How dare you, you lowly tradesman, blaspheme the divine? Leon's thunderous tirade was no mere rebuke. This was the most exalted being in the mortal realm, and words spoken by a living saint and demigod are magical in their own right. The fury he unleashed in his rage was not something a normal human could withstand. Huh! Her eardrums are shaking and her mind is foggy. Her heart raced as she felt the wrath of an unimaginable divine agent, but despite his incomprehensible rage, she understood one thing. The life and death of the Dujong Group and its managing director, Park Zhongchan, depended on the otherworldly man in front of her. Your Majesty. At that moment, Hari, sensing the danger, stood in front of Leon, her legs trembling as she forced herself to not fall. Your Majesty, if you kill him, we'll be in trouble. Being a survivor is not a license to get away with anything. Understanding Leon's culture and class is one thing, but committing a crime is another. Of course, Leon's value is not comparable to that of a managing director of a major national company, but even so, this was not it. Don't be mistaken, this king is not a fool that runs around. With that, Hari, Park, and the rest of the staff breathed a sigh of relief. Director Park broke out in a cold sweat. Foolish one, you've made your sins known. Yes. No, What the hell had he done wrong? He tried to slap a price on it. But how could a savage who had been on Earth for less than a week know that? Feeling wronged, Mr. Park cautiously pleaded. I really don't know what's wrong. How can you be so ignorant and clueless? At this point, Leon's eyes held pity, not contempt. The crops come from the land blessed by Demera. It is a gift bestowed by the goddess upon the farmers who toil and cultivate the fields. Humans cannot survive alone. When there is a bad harvest, they would starve, and when they are hungry, they must go to work in the fields. They dig up the soil and steal the seeds from the earth. Therefore, those who are farmers should be grateful for the blessings of the land and thankful to the divine for its creation. Faith, divinity, and divine grace is not something that can be bought with gold, but is bestowed upon a grateful heart and faith. Thou art a lowly thing, deceiving others for the sake of petty profit. How dost thou seek to profit from the product of a divinity thou hast no faith in? Profit! Director Park Jong-chan gritted his teeth and backed away. As he walked away, apparently in a wait-and-see manner, Hari expressed concern. Is it going to be okay? He may be a lowly trader in your majesty's eyes, but he's quite influential. Not even worth bothering with. Leon is not dismissive of the influence of businessmen. Businesses play a huge role in modern civilization, and they have spread their influence far and wide in the soil of capitalism. 10,000 temples carry a burden, but it's not a burden that can shake this king. There was an overwhelming confidence in him. No, it was beyond confidence. He was the chosen one, the king recognized by the heavens, a living proof of the divine right of kings. The emperor of the empire, the steel dwarves of the underground city, and the guardians of the forest recognized the demigod's authority. Only the self-indulgent take the agents of the gods lightly. In the world of divinity to come, they will be excluded and relegated, so it is not worth dealing with the ignorant and unintelligible. By the way, have you done what I said to prepare? You mean the issue of the faith? Yes, it wouldn't hurt the country, of course. Hari remembered Leon's request not long ago, and of course, the Hunters Association flipped. Actually, Director Park Jong-chan contacted me before his visit, saying he had some suitable land. If Leon could solve this problem, there was no reason why the Hunters Association couldn't help, especially since the president was happy to see it. Since the Gate Crisis, humanity has lost tons of arable land. Countries have been overwhelmed with responding to gates in urban centers and have failed to discover gates in rural and remote areas. As a result, many gates have caused dungeon breaks and much land has been contaminated. The only reason humanity hasn't had a severe food crisis in recent years is purely because of the amount of people dying. And some of the plains that failed to be dealt with have been permanently contaminated, creating countless displaced people. The Naju Plain, where Choi had spent his entire life plowing fields, was one of them. Dad, do you see nothing but fields again from the morning breeze? Despite his son's question, Choi remained silent and looked at his land contaminated by miasma. Today, Choi is a government-subsidized assistant at a supermarket in town, but until 5 years ago, he was a farmer in Naju. He had spent his entire life herding cows and driving tractors, but 5 years ago, a failed red gate triggered a dungeon break, and the entire Naju Plain was contaminated with miasma. The contamination was so intense that many farmers, including Choi, lost their land. Nothing can be done on land contaminated with miasma, and ordinary people were contaminated just by stepping on it, and only hunters could survive. No one wants to buy land that doesn't grow crops, and although there were government subsidies based on the size of the land, they were pennies on the dollar. They've been buying reagents to clean up the miasma from the tower, but even that has its limits. The reagents were unable to cleanse the land of excessive contamination. The next new reagent will work, and the next one will be better. Choi spent his fortune to buy the reagents from the tower, even though he was now the only one who kept trying. Give up now. It's a land that even the leaders can't do anything about. Shut up. I fed you and your brothers with rice grown on that land. I sent you to college. What kind of land is that? It's the land I worked my whole life. Since his birth, there has been a great war that has divided the country, and he grew up in a war-torn country receiving handouts from the military. He had big dreams and wanted to buy his own land and farm it. He wanted to raise his children to be Southerners. In the end, bought the land with the money he had earned by risking his life fighting the Viet Cong in Vietnam. The land and the fields were everything to him. All he had to do was farm the last of it and leave it all to his children, and he would reap the rewards of his life's work. Fucking bastards! Bastards! They appeared and polluted his land. He had spent 25 years worrying that miasma would contaminate his land, and hoped that it would never appear on his land, but in the end, it happened. Now he has only one wish. Just once he wanted to plant a seedling on his land and see that golden color again. He wanted to see it just once before he died. Uncle, did you hear what Mr. Lee said? The Hunters Association is introducing something, another unhealthy and expensive drug. The reagents sold by the tower were expensive. Even though they were subsidized by the government, they were still expensive. The purifying probability of the reagents was not high, and it would take 2 years if they were unlucky. Besides, they didn't work at all in a highly polluted land like the Naju Plain. Let me tell you what I heard. He was always the one who cursed the association and the tower, but always listened to the news while holding a glimmer of hope. My name is Leon Dragonia Lionheart, and I have come to preach my faith to you. The blonde nobleman, accompanied by the association's staff, spouted more nonsense than the usual visiting wizards of the tower. And then, a golden light bloomed in the land contaminated by miasma. Ah, it was a land that could not be purified by expensive reagents or priests. A cursed land where not a single pest could grow, let alone crops. But, alas, Choi fell to his knees before the blonde man and thanked the man for the miracle he had performed. "Who are you?" The boisterous shamans and the priests said this was a trial from God. But to Choi, the man in front of him was a god, a savior. "Farmer with noble hands, I am the Lion King, a representative of the temple of the 10,000 gods, and I have come to bring you the divinity of life and abundance." On this day, the first worshipper of Demera on earth offered his faith, and the farmers of the polluted lands followed suit. It was real. Hari marveled at the cleaned-up plains of Naju. The Hunan plains were still in the first stages of contamination, and even with the reagents from the tower, it could still be cleaned up. To Hari and the rest of the association, it seemed like Leon's special power was the only thing that could have cleaned up the Hunan plains. But Leon insisted that it was a miracle of the gods, and he demanded the place to prove it. That was when the cleansing of the Naju plains was decided. 5 years ago, after the dungeon break at the Red Gate, the land was completely polluted, and even the newest reagents from the wizards of the Magic Tower were ineffective. Leon is willing to cleanse the barren lands on one condition. First, tell the president. It would be nice to meet him in person. We'll have to see about that. With the proposal delivered over the phone, the president gave the Hunter Association discretion over the matter. As per the agreement, 8,735 hectares of the farmers of the Naju Plains will be transferred to the patronage of His Majesty's Guild. Of course, subject to the consent of the residents and the sale of blessed rice to the government. No problem. With the help of the association, Leon established a guild in the country, which he named the 10,000 Gods. It was the name he chose to spread the faith of the 10,000 gods across the world. The guild was given a special autonomous region where its members could live and train and be provided with help. Businesses could even move in and pay taxes. It was a law that had been forced through by the 10 guilds, but it gave Leon a legitimate estate. Of course, the government has put in place minimal safeguards, so it's not permanent. Don't worry, I would never covet the lawful lands of another nation. This is only to spread the faith, and I will return them to the president when the time is right. Technically, to the people. Leon had no interest in the land, since this county was too small for him to be greedy, and it would take more than that to restore the Lionheart Kingdom to its former glory. However, after obtaining a suitable foothold and building up his power, he would make his move. First, we'll need to get the residents' consent to join your Majesty's Guild, since they have the right to reside in the special territory. No problem. Leon approached the waiting farmers. Some were middle-aged, some were elderly. Welcome, Leon de. Choi bowed and greeted Leon, but couldn't quite memorize his long name. He's going to be in trouble. The Lionheart Emperor didn't even allow Hari to call him by his first name, but contrary to her expectations, Leon smiled gently, and his voice trailed off. Your Majesty is sufficient, old man. I'm sorry. What, are you discriminating against people? Hari made a sour face, but Leon continued. Did you say you're Choi Chul-jin? Yes, I did. You have sworn to serve the goddess Demera, the goddess of life and fertility. What about the others? At that, a middle-aged man stepped forward. Are you going to cleanse our land as well? Leon frowned at the middle-aged man's words. Do not attempt to bargain with the divine, for I promise you nothing in return. He despised shallow beliefs that promised to grant wishes in exchange for offerings, faith, or devotion. You can't trade with God. Only sincere worship will be granted by the gods. To ask for a favor in exchange for faith is to doubt the divine and try to trade. I will give you the proper teaching. Will you listen to the divine teachings? Yes, I will listen. I am not forcing you to believe. It is your choice. Just then, a young man approached, a rarity in this part of the country. A son, to be exact, who had inherited his late father's land and was invited to this meeting. I go to church. It doesn't matter. You can believe in both gods. Is that okay? Divinity is not a singular existence. There are many great gods in the world, so why should we believe in only one? There are many faiths in the pantheon, and its polytheistic nature does not limit beliefs. It is only up to you to follow the teachings and practice them. I will not impose my beliefs on you. Of course, if someone worships an evil deity, he will mercilessly decapitate them and tear their souls apart. Join this king's guild. Follow the due process to enter the enclosure the king will erect and receive the teachings of the goddess. I'll do it. Please let me do it. Choi eagerly embraced the faith. It was a miracle that no king, no shaman, and no priest could have performed. He had come face to face with a real god, and he had purified his land. How could he not believe then? How could he not be grateful to the one who had given his old body a chance to plow the fields once more? Choi rejoiced with tears of gratitude that he could reap the beauty of his life's work. Yes, I will follow you. Me too. One by one, the hesitant ones stepped forward. The land was contaminated with miasma and could not be sold. So what was there to lose receiving help to cleanse it? Do you swear to follow the divinity of life and fertility and to practice its teachings? I swear! I swear! With that, they were officially inducted into Leon's guild, the 10,000 Gods. Leon knew they had their eyes set on the purification of the land, but he was confident that one day they would find their true faith. Very well, if you believe and follow, you are children of the goddess. I, on behalf of the gods, will bless you as you deserve. Leon lifted the chalice and poured the holy water within it upon his new followers. The holy water flowed through the crowns of their heads, energizing them. Oh my God, my head is clear and my body is full of energy. I feel like I can see the world differently. Is that straw doll really a goddess? Yes, Goddess Demera. The faith of those who already believed in the goddess filled the lion heart, and Goddess Demera would turn that faith into divine power. Build a temple. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a place where everyone gathers weekly to pray. Leon preached the teachings of life and abundance, which shouldn't be too hard to follow. Then came the most important moment. What about the offerings? How do we pay? The congregation embraced this new faith, but was uneasy about it. After all, religion is all about collecting periodic offerings under all sorts of pretenses. You pay to make your child study well, you pay to expand the temple, and their living was already tight since they hadn't been able to farm for 5 years. You only have to pay one thing. The congregation's faces lit up at the words. No need to make a new offering for every holiday or season? What a blessing. The 10 Commandments. To the wide-eyed congregants who wondered if they had misheard, but Leon declared proudly, you will pay by contributing to the salvation of the world. Hari, who heard his words, thought, isn't this evil? Es, the Night King who returned with a god. Chapter 14, Demira, Goddess of the Earth. Contaminated Naju Plain. What is the mysterious rice field? A cleanup that even the experts said was impossible? A new reagent from the tower? Is there a guild of farmers in Naju Plain? For a while after the purification of the Naju Plains, the internet was full of news about the purified land. Leon had already cleaned up land contaminated with miasma in the Hunan Plain, but it wasn't widely known since the Firebird Guild had pressured the media. However, the Naju Plain was a different story, since it had been contaminated for 5 years. South Korea's self-sufficiency in food was greatly reduced, forcing the country to import expensive rice from China and Japan. No matter what farming methods were applied, no matter what reagents were used, the cleanup of the Naju Plain, which was thought to be impossible, happened overnight. The farmers of the Naju Plain were moved to tears, but the reaction of the internet and celebrities was more rational. Has the tower developed a new reagent? The tower technological advances have been extraordinary lately. How do we eat crops that grow so fast? Aren't they inedible because of the toxins? Humanity's technological prowess in magic engineering is increasing every day. At this rate, the world's grain fields will soon be restored. That was the general reaction. When faced with an improbable phenomenon, most people try to interpret it according to their common sense. For the people of a scientific civilization, miracles and the descent of the divine are alien, irrational ideas. Your Majesty, the internet is reacting. Perhaps an official announcement from the association is in order. The Hunters Association had not yet made an announcement about the gods. The disturbance caused by the country's largest religious faction is one thing, but the appearance of a government organization promoting a religion is another. Even if you announce it now, the foolish people won't believe it. They need more proof. Leon spent the next 3 days touring the Naju Plains, and as he purified the land, he found that a higher quality of faith than he had expected permeated the temple. The faith that flowed to the god of life and fertility was immediately converted into holy power, and Leon was able to harness it to cleanse the Naju Plains. A crested effigy replaced the image of the goddess Demera on the Naju Plains, and the people bowed and worshipped at its altar. I give you the right to cultivate this land, said the king, and you shall raise up the flesh of Demera to continue its fertility. The new believers were grateful for the cleansing of the land, but hesitant, and rightly so. But your majesty, isn't a 10% tax a bit much to say the least? Yes, this was the problem. Leon briefly explained the tax structure of the Lionheart Kingdom. You pay 90% of your total output. This was the same for nobles and freemen alike. How does a country run when 90% of its income is collected in taxes? Isn't everyone starving to death? This was a common criticism of the kingdom from the empire, but it was a misunderstanding of the structure of Lionheart's kingdom. The kingdom of Lionheart, under his rule, is a divinely centered, unified nation, and the gods of light and justice governed the ruling class and the common people alike. Fishermen who followed the gods of the sea and its waves caught the allowed amount of fish, and the land tilled by farmers who followed the goddess of life and fertility was always bountiful. Even the king was carefully chosen from among the holy knights by the goddess, so that over the millennia of succession, the kingdom was always at peace. It was a perfect social structure with a divine connection, and only invasions from the outside disturbed the peaceful kingdom. Greedy northern barbarians, crude orcs, and filthy vampires who refuse to die have invaded the bountiful kingdom, but there are honorable men who are willing to give their lives against these invaders, knights. They follow the gods of light and justice, armed with iron armors and war horses, and bravely slay their enemies. The free people praised the knights for their bravery and honor and supported them, and so the 10 Commandments were born. It was a system that the freemen willingly agreed to in order to support the honorable knights as they rode endlessly to their deaths. Of course, this was only possible because society was inherently just. Unlike empires and miscellaneous kingdoms that are often torn apart by judicial corruption and greed, the Lionheart Kingdom was chosen by the goddess because it was just and honorable. The slightest misappropriation of the overflowing taxes would result in the withdrawal of the goddess's favor, and the family would not be given the opportunity to train to become an honorable holy knight. That's why the taxes of the Lionheart Kingdom have always been used for the common good. They were used to build bridges, build walls, improve facilities, and care for the families of those who died honorably in battle. All of this is done under the watchful eye of the goddess's perfect king, King Lionheart. So no matter how much you pay in taxes, you can't complain. It was with this background that the country became the last bastion against the invasion of the demons. But this is Earth and Korea. Even the peasants who had witnessed the divine and vowed to become believers agreed. They understood that he was the king of a medieval civilization, and that the culture of the survivors was different from Earth. But this is Earth, and the land was technically owned by the farmers, and they had to pay a separate tax to the government. Your Majesty, but 90% is too much. They have to pay taxes to the government, and they have to pay for their living expenses and fertilizer. What do you mean? Why should they worry about paying taxes to the government, living expenses and fertilizer? What? Hari and the other farmers, who had been listening intently, looked puzzled at Leon's unexpected statement. As a follower of the goddess, how can you worry about going hungry? The food you pay as taxes will be distributed, leaving a minimum amount to cover all expenses. What he was saying was simple. No taxes, no paperwork, not even living expenses or anything else. I will select a pious man from among you to be a priest. The rest of the harvest will be purely yours, and you may sell it for dignity and luxury. So everything is taken care of for you, your food, your welfare, your life, except for 10% of your output. What? Does that sound appealing to you? No. Still, 90% is too much, don't you think? At that point, Hari gave Leon a sly look. Come to think of it, this blessed rice is worth a fortune. The performance of 160 grams of rice per kernel is comparable to that of most fortifiers, and the duration is overwhelmingly long. However, because its yield is so much higher than that of potions, the price of potions related to health and mana recovery will drop massively. Using a very conservative estimate of the market oversupply and the resulting price drop, the Hunter Association's appraiser concluded that the conclusion was that the price of an 80-kilogram sack of rice would be 150 million won. Eh? The farmers rolled their eyes and doubted their ears. 150,000? A sack of rice? What was the rice harvest 5 years ago? Long live the gods. Long live the goddess. Leon listened with satisfaction to the praise of the divine that was well deserved, and taught them the tenets of Demera, the goddess of life and fertility. Make an image of the goddess from the first fruits of your harvest, and offer it to her altar. Do not piss in the fields. Manure is fine, Build a scarecrow and make sure it has a hat and clothes. When you harvest, sing a song. It's better if it's a song of thanks to the goddess. Don't go hungry even if you're in a hurry. Is that all right, Your Majesty? What do you mean? I just feel like there are too many material conditions attached to your faith. Of course, religion basically promises a take-two deal. You die and you're saved, but Leon didn't seem like the kind of guy who'd want to believe that. How can I expect the nobility of a knight and the dignity of a nobleman from a bunch of ignorant commoners? But if they get drunk on divine grace and lose their proper faith, it doesn't matter because that grace can always be taken away. Leon had no intention of being greedy from the start, for in the end, only those with true faith would be chosen by the divine. And it's not just farmers he's preaching to. When the crops grown there are released to the world, people will witness a second miracle, crops that are healthy to eat. The people of this planet, terrified of disease and forced to rely on the barbaric practice of medicine, will eventually admit. Will the crops that grow be used as seedlings? Some will be purchased by the Hunters Association. It was only a matter of time before a world with divinity would come. And after the cleansing of the Naju Plains and building the altar for the goddess Demera, the first crops were deposited in Leon's storehouses as foretold. This time, he said, take seedlings of all but the most delicate varieties to expand agriculture. Those who need money can sell them at a reasonable price, as the association has agreed to purchase them for research. Leon gave most of the crops to Mr. Choi, whom he had appointed as a temporary priest who would distribute the necessary food to the people and plant seedlings for the next season. The villagers were left to sell the rest, which the association had promised to buy, and which was worth well over 5 billion won. Are you sure it will be fine if you leave it to him? You mean the elderly farmer? Yes, you've handed over most of the earnings. As far as Hari was concerned, Leon's method was too simple. The crops from each parcel of land were given to the Lord, and when the Lord was absent, the priest would take care of it and send the appropriate amount back to the Lord Leon. Oh my God, it's like they're setting you up to steal your taxes. How do you catch people stealing in your kingdom? We didn't have to catch them. Why? Why is that? Because everyone who did went to hell. Leon is an inhabitant of a world where God is real, not Earth, where people talk about heaven and hell. There was harmony with the divine, faith and grace. Of course, there was also punishment. Cheating bureaucrats? Corrupt nobles? Vicious knights? How could such beings survive? A man who cheats the gods for a moment's riches and glory. That's a different kind of courage. Hari swallowed hard. Faced with Demera's divinity, she was overwhelmed by the existence of the gods and their grace. But the realization that there were also divine punishments gave her chills. There are 2 ways to become a hunter. Enroll in the Hunter Academy and spend 3 years of state-funded training and development to receive your hunter's certificate. This is the case of Han Hari, a representative of the National Hunter Association. I graduated at the top of my class. Hey, I didn't ask. Hey. The second way is to take the Hunter Association's authorized awakening test, which assesses your job and skills. Awakeners who were past the age to enter the academy were usually allowed in, and many hunters traveled to the association's testing grounds every year to renew their ranks. I don't know if Your Majesty would like to be tested as well, but it's more convenient for the job, procedurally speaking. So, what kind of job does Leon have? What other skills might he have? Hari wondered inwardly. Survivors often had skills that Earthlings couldn't acquire, and the association was intrigued. What the hell is that? But Leon's response was cold. How are you going to test this Lionheart King with a bunch of crap? Then why did you ask me to take you there? I need to find some useful soldiers. I will test them. Isn't that, the protocol? If not, make it so. At Leon's insistence, Hari wondered how to report this to Chief Kim. More than that, when will the president return home? I'll call him right away. Hello, Chief Kim? It would be better to allow this Night King to meet with the president. The Night King, who returned with a god. Chapter 15. D-rank hunter Ku Dae-sung came to the association for grading again this year. Mr. Ku, you're here again this year? A middle-aged man is happy to see him. It was team leader Kim Do-han, who had worked with the gate mining team a few times. It's been a while. You've been working hard, Mr. Ku. Haha. At the words of team leader Kim Do-han, Ku Dae-sung let out an awkward laugh. His age is 32 this year, and he has been a hunter for over 10 years. Talented people usually awaken their powers in middle school and receive admission to the academy. However, he awakened at the age of 22. His rank is D, and he has no unique skills. How about this year? Do you think you'll improve your rank? Haha, I'll try. Ku Dae-sung has been a D rank for 10 years. It is said that the limit of the untalented is C rank, but he was stuck at D rank for 10 years. Why don't you join our team? If you're as good as Mr. Gu, you'll be diligent and do a good job, and you'll become an ace in no time. Not all hunters who have awakened their powers have combat jobs. There are those who work in production, those who work in research, and quite a few who work in conventional industry, rather than as hunters. However, the vast majority of untalented and unremarkable hunters work as porters for raiding parties or on mining teams that stop just before the gate closes to mine for items. They were able to do this because they were much stronger than the average person, but they were still laborers. Ku Dae-sung had been doing this menial labor for 10 years, but he couldn't give up. Even as a D-rank hunter, the money he earned in the dungeon was nothing compared to the menial labor. I need to earn more money, and unless I can find a dungeon with high profits, I can't pay the interest. He had debts, an old mother to support, and younger siblings to take care of. He couldn't afford it without his hunter income, but there was hope that one day he would awaken his unique skills and become a hunter who could take on high-level gates as part of a raiding party. He imagines a future where he can shine as an awakened. But the reality was harsh, and even that glimmer of hope was fading. I'll try, he says, but he doesn't expect much. His goal is now realistic, and he'd be grateful if he could somehow become a C rank and escape the life of a porter. A young man is coming? Just then, someone enters the association's waiting room. It's a foreigner with blonde hair. Could it be someone from Europe? He looks like royalty. The eyes of the people in the lobby turn to the blonde man. Wow, he's handsome. Oh my God, he's so handsome. He was certainly striking. With the straight gaze and gorgeous blonde hair, he had the air of a nobleman. Most of all, in a place full of blackheads, a blonde man was bound to stand out. Is he a foreign worker? I think he's European. Europe is not all well off. There are poor countries too. Even after the cataclysm, South Korea was a fairly well-off developed country. It's not a bad country for foreign workers to come and work in, except for the fact that it has a terrible food self-sufficiency rate and relies on imports for most of its food. Curiosity piqued, Kim approached the blonde man with his trademark backwoods charm. Hey, young man, how are you? Don't talk to me, you lowly thing. For a moment, he thought he'd misheard me, but the intensity of the verbal assault that came back was so strong that he forgot what to say. Ha! You learned Korean in a weird way, didn't you? Well, yeah. Mr. Kim turned around, unable to ask any more questions. At that moment, the blonde man's gaze crossed with Ku Dae-sung's. Ku Dae-sung gasped as the pressure from the blonde man's gaze was like a huge presence suppressing him. Ha! The only reason Ku Dae-sung could breathe was because an association employee called his number, 57. 57, Mr. Ku Dae-sung. Yes, I'm coming. Ku Dae-sung rushed to the association staff, feeling a strange chill from the gaze behind him. What a bunch of lowlifes. Turning his head from the association's lobby, Leon looked at the assembled faces and made a harsh assessment. Weak. Leon's gaze alone can penetrate a person's insides, sensing the energy within them. However, the auras within them were all dull and small. In the first place, those who came to take the ranking test were either junior hunters or those who were just about to take the awakening test. A bunch of ignoramuses whose talent wasn't discovered unless they were from the academy, but Leon is not looking for the strong. It is a lament that there are no men worthy of being soldiers. He's not here to find knights. He's here to recruit men to follow and support him. Soldiers. Of course, a knight and a soldier have very different standards. Soldiers are not serfs, and they're not going to be used as a meat shield, so they should have some talent, but they don't even pass that small threshold. Though I see one who might be useful. What he sees is more than just internal energy. He sees marks, scars, signs of a life lived. A man of Leon's stature can judge people by their face alone. Most of them are full-grown men, but their faces show no sign of hardship. There should have been a few with skilled muscles, but even then, they were barely useful as laborers. No janitors. It's not like I'm going to be satisfied from the start. Leon stood up when his turn was called and headed for the interview room. Leon, number 77, Mr. Dragonia Lionheart? The interviewers were employees of the association. Of course, they knew Leon was a survivor, but they didn't know his personality. "Address me as your majesty, commoner." The association worker paused, then nodded to the deputy who poked him in the side. Your majesty." Leon listened to the official's deference with satisfaction. He knew his common sense was at odds with Earth's, but there was a reason he insisted on imposing his version of justice and decorum. "It is not for royalty to consider the laws of the commoners. Though he is an earthling, he has been a knight of noble birth and a king for 300 years. Royalty is not bound by the rules of the lesser, and there is no reason for him to consider cultural differences, even if they are worlds apart." "Then please place your hand on the measuring device here for the test." The test for a hunter's rank is a two-step process. First, they're tested for unique skills and class aptitudes. Usually the class aptitudes that follow the inherent skills are warrior or swordsman, and in the rare case of a wizard aptitude, they would contact the tower. The next step is to take a practical test at a gate maintained by the society to determine your final rank. They had heard that Leon was a very powerful survivor, so they were very curious to see what his unique skills would be. "Foolish." "What?" But it was Leon's scolding that came back. "How can a commoner test the honor of a knight?" "What?" "Your Majesty, it's not us that's measuring. It's a magic tool, and it's quite accurate. How can a machine measure a knight's worth? Only honorable knights and the gods can measure a knight." The association staff was puzzled too. They'd had plenty of survivors with odd personalities, but this was the first one to refuse to take the test. Well then, on the very next test, no. You refuse to take the test, so you must go. Then why are you here? I'm here to recruit useful soldiers, but I can't believe even the auditors are such scumbags. Headhunting? So openly? Many guilds, including the 10 guilds, hire scouts to recruit good hunters. But to openly refuse the test and come to headhunt like this? So far I haven't found anyone I like, so what's the next test? There's a practical test at the gate. Good, I'll be there to observe. But the employee could only nod as the manager poked him in the side once again. When each gate has its own concept. Dungeon type and field type are the largest categories, followed by several smaller categories such as quest type and capture type. The general rule of thumb is that once a gate is cleared, it should be closed and removed. However, in some cases, gates are kept open even if the boss is not captured, or the closing conditions are not fulfilled, such as the Soul Station gate. Does anyone else get dizzy? Some people get motion sickness when passing through the gate. The Soul Station gate is a field-type gate with a green meadow. Kude Sung sighed softly as he looked at the Soul Station gate, which he was already visiting for the 10th time. This year's measurements weren't much different from last year. There were no unique skills and no stat increases. If he wanted to turn the tables, he'd have to perform well in this practical test. And in order to perform, party members are important. Kude Sung looked at the faces of the party members who had joined him for this test. "Wow, this is the gate. Brother, this is a hot mess. Jinmi, let's turn off our cell phones first." 2 newbies. He also saw the blonde foreigner from the waiting room. If he's here to test his rank at that age, it's most likely a case of late awakening since academy graduates are tested separately. In a party of 5, 3 of them are just beginners. Kude Sung turned his eyes towards his last hope, but it was the old man who was there. Hey, the air is so good. The old man must have been over 60 years old. He may have awakened during the cataclysm 30 years ago, but he had not made a name for himself among the first generation of hunters. That meant that the old man was just an unremarkable C or D rank hunter like himself. I wasn't expecting it, but it can't be helped that they're either beginners or D rank in the first place. Then hunters, don't worry, and feel free to attack the gate, even if it's dangerous, because I, a B-grade hunter, will step forward. Leaving the association staff behind, Kude Sung stepped forward. Then, let's introduce ourselves and confirm our positions. Even at a time like this, he had to play the role of party leader and raise his evaluation score. I'm Kude Sung. I've been a hunter for 10 years and my class is warrior. My main position is dealer. Shin Tae-hoon. I awakened this year and I use a shield and spear. This is my sister Shin Na-yeon. She uses daggers and is learning to use a bow. They are beginners who haven't even found their aptitude yet, so Kude Sung cautiously asked, "Did you two go to separate schools?" Due to age restrictions, those who can't attend a hunter academy often attend training centers run by veteran hunters. It's not as structured as an academy, but it's more of a cram school. Me and my brother went to school for 3 months at a time. They were complete novices. Ku-de-sung didn't expect it, so he approached the old man. Hey, old man, what about you? This old man is 50 years old and my name is Okang Tai. Although I'm an awakened, I was recently dismissed from my job. His weapon is a pistol and he has little experience for his age. A pistol. Even if he was a martial artist, it would be hard for him to overcome the disadvantage of a sword or spear. Huh. And finally, the foreign visitor, do you speak Korean? The blonde man. Leon stared at him for a moment, unmoved by Ku-de-sung's question. This king doesn't fight. You're a good fighter? Did you learn Korean backwards? You can't use a dragon-slaying sword to kill a chicken. He learned Korean backwards. Ku-de-sung scratched his head thoughtfully and decided on a position. So, Taehoon, you'll be the tank. Me and the old man will be the main dealers, Nari. You'll be the archer and that foreigner. What the hell, why doesn't he have a weapon? While the hunters at the gate had brought their own weapons, Leon had none. That foreigner. Didn't you bring a weapon? Strange. I thought the association would lend him a weapon or two. Handsome brother over there, do you want me to lend you a weapon? At that moment, Shin Na-yeon, who was holding a dagger and a bow, cautiously asked. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at Leon, who seemed to have an air of transcending humanity. Do you want to use a dagger or a bow? My main skill is daggers, so would you like to try this bow? Do you know how to shoot a bow? Shin Na-yeon hands over a bow. It's a new product called a smart bow that can automatically aim and adjust the string tension. You want to give me this? No, just use it and give it back. Leon stared at the bow in disbelief, as if he heard something he shouldn't have. Then he frowned as if he had been insulted and threw the bow to the ground. Ack! My bow. Hey, what are you doing? Shin Tae-hoon was furious when his sister's bow was thrown to the ground. However, the Night King is equally angry at being insulted. Of course, the reason for his anger is beyond the comprehension of a lowly commoner. Knights don't use cowardly ranged weapons. You've got to be kidding me. Ku-de-sung rubbed his eyes.
The Night King Who Returned with a God, Chapter 16. Cowardly Ranged Weapons. In Leon's world, ranged weapons are cowardly weapons for the lowly. They are unacceptable to a knight who values honor, and the only people who use them are serfs and free soldiers who have no need for honor. Of course, he was a natural commander and an undefeated rising general, so he had no shortage of archers, catapults, and cannons. But ranged weapons have their limits. There's something called recoil, and it's the same with firearms. There's a limit to the amount of ammunition, a limit to the amount of firepower. It's like a weapon with a maximum value. But swords and spears are different. What you swing is what you swing, and what you throw is what you throw, and it's purely up to you. If you can't split a boulder with your sword, you're not a knight. Can't blow away an opponent's mounted charge. A good knight can pierce through pikemen. In the end, honor and fame are earned through sheer strength, not through the use of a bow. For a holy knight who has completed the quest and been chosen by the Grail, a ranged weapon is a dishonorable admission of inadequacy. No, there's something wrong with you. Of course, it didn't make sense in modern terms. You're a funny fellow. Oh, Kang Hyuk laughed it off, but not the rest of the party. They were about to say something when a frantic hunter employee shouted out, "We need to get going." Okay. Ku-de-sung followed where the association employee led, thinking this test might be a bust. This test, how does it work? Ku-de-sung asked, and the association staff answered. Basically, you'll be hunting 50 kobolds. They'll be out in the field, but if it's too dangerous, I'll step in. Even though the staff member said that only kobolds could be hunted, Ku-de-sung wanted to earn a higher score. Of course, hunting gnolls and boss monsters earns higher points, and there are specific areas where they appear. Hey guys, I know a place. Why don't you go there and hunt? You're more experienced than us, so I'm in. The three agree, and Leon remained silent, so Ku-de-sung led the party out of the meadow and into the forest. Tae-hoon and Na-yeon, the newbies, craned their necks to see where he was leading them. Mr. De-sung, I see a village at the end of the meadow. There must be a lot of them. Don't mess with the villages. We're outnumbered and could be surrounded by kobolds and gnolls. Ku-de-sung is a veteran of the game, tackling the Seoul Station Gate for the 10th time. He has seen kobolds and gnolls at other gates as well, although they're not as frequent because they're only set up for testing. We're going to target the kobolds in the cave. Ku De Sung explained the advantages of fighting in caves. First, the cramped quarters and one-way passageways meant they wouldn't have to worry about being surrounded, tearing off a patch of grass he'd found along the way. I'm going to light a fire with the grass here and inject smoke inside, so we can easily target the cave kobolds. Ah, you're different after all. Even as he was praised by the party members, Ku De Sung smiled bitterly. Coming to the test gate 10 times wasn't that big of a deal. As his rank increased, the test gates would naturally change. For C rank was the Samjian Station Gate, and for B rank, the 63rd Building Gate. He studied and researched all the strategies, imagining that one day he would be able to enter the top gates. But he could only see the gate here at Seoul Station. I have to move up this time. I can't stay at D rank forever. He wanted to be strong, and he was sick and tired of being D rank. Kobolds up ahead! At that moment, Shin Tae-hoon, who was in the lead as a tank, stopped, and the kobolds spotted them because they were so loud. Grrr. Kobolds are humanoid monsters with the heads of dogs. They are about the height of an elementary school student and are the lowest class of monsters. Block them with your shield in front, Tae-hoon. Yes. The kobolds' charge was straightforward and simple, and they had a strong tendency to go for pure strength and power. In that case, the hunters would win unless they were overwhelmingly outnumbered. Kyak! The kobold that had been charging upright was knocked down by Na Yan's arrow. The kobold spun around to face Tae-hoon's shield and crashed head-on into it, bleeding from the nose. Stupid bastards! Tae-hoon plunged his sword into the fallen kobold, but just then, another kobold threw himself at Tae-hoon, and he fell to the ground in anger. Ouch! Tae-hoon! Just as the kobold was about to sink its teeth into him, Dae-sung's sword pierced the kobold's neck, and hot blood poured out onto Tae-hoon's face. Don't let your guard down. They may be weak, but they're quick. There are 5 kobolds left, but Na Yan's arrow, drawn straight, pierces the second kobold. The old man, O Kang-tae, takes over the fallen line and punches the kobolds in the face with his armored fist. It was a swift jab. Kung! Kung! The kobolds fell, one after another, as Dae-sung picked up Tae-hoon and joined them. Whoa! I'm sorry. I made a mistake. When Tae-hoon apologized for his mistake and breaking the formation, Dae-sung clapped his hands to encourage him. It's okay. It happens to everyone at first. He too had made his share of mistakes against the kobolds. Considering he was a rookie, Tae-hoon's mistakes weren't even on the error side. Na Yan took care of 2 of them, and thanks to you, no one got hurt. Everyone did a good job. Despite his initial misgivings, this is not a bad party, except for one person. Hey, foreigner, you. You didn't do anything in our fight, did you? That's right. I just stood in the back and watched, Mr. Employee. Is this okay? The arrow was returned to Leon, who remained silent. He was dying to get rid of Leon and get another party member. Ha ha. I'll take that into consideration, so don't worry too much. Leon would get the lowest score, and the others would get extra points. Dae-sung was disappointed, but he thought it was fine if they would get extra points. If that's the case, let's go further in. We'll find a cave soon. True to his word, they walked further into the forest, and a cave appeared. There really is a cave? Ugh, do we have to go in and fight? I don't like dark places. Nayeon's complaint made him want to say, You'll never be a hunter. But Dae-sung held it together and smiled. No, we're going to raid the cave. Raid? Well, a basic part of being a hunter is raiding gates, so I need you all to gather some leaves from around the area. We'll set them on fire and send the smoke into the cave. Ah, you're going to choke them to death with smoke? Wow, awesome. Then we'll just have to catch the ones that jump out. That was it. In Ku De Sung's experience, there were more than 20 kobolds in this cave. He had been using this method since the 6th game, as it allowed him to take out more than 24 kobolds with little loss of health in a gate attack where health balance was crucial. As he organizes his plan and gathers the leaves and grass clippings around him, his eyes catch sight of Leon, arms crossed and eyes closed. "Hey, why don't you help instead of playing?" Leon opened his closed eyes. His blue eyes pierced Dae-sung. "In your eyes, you see this king being lazy. If not that, then something else." But he couldn't say it out loud. He couldn't explain it with logic or reason. But a strange gut feeling told him that if he said anything more here, he might get in trouble. Whatever. You're the lowest of the low, so you know." It was the best he could do to avoid eye contact. "I've got it all." "Do you need a lighter for the fire?" "This old man has a lighter. Oh, I've long since given up smoking, don't get me wrong." He was about to light the tinder. "Do you really think that's best?" Leon spoke up. "What? You haven't even helped yet?" "This king asked you if that is the best move. Don't make me tell you twice." "I've tried this 3 times, and it worked all 3 times. It's based on experience, which isn't bad, but how can you rely on experience when that experience is so shallow?" "What are you talking about, really?" For a moment he thought he did something wrong, but he knew better. "Oh, never mind. You're too young to have experience." He lit a fire and pushed the smoke from the large leaves around him into the cave. Kya! A monstrous screeching sound echoed through the cave. "Oh, they're coming!" Tae-hoon shouts as he raises his shield, and everyone prepares for battle. And just as the first group of kobolds burst out of the cave, they stop dead in their tracks at the sight of the flames blocking the entrance. Now! The arrow Nayeon pulled flew, and the rocks thrown by Old Man O and Dae-sung crushed the kobolds' faces. Crack! Hahak! One after another the kobolds fell. After killing 5 of them in an instant, Dae-sung exclaimed in triumph, "See, my method is not wrong." The next group of kobolds jumped up. They were gasping for air to keep from choking on the smoke, and they looked dizzy. "All right, let's get on with it," he shouted as he took down the 7th kobold. Krrr! Another similar but different howl was heard, and Ku Dae-sung doubted his ears. Noel. He turned to the sound, and there, staring back at him, was Noel, armed with armor and shield, and a one-handed axe, with the head of a vicious hyena, and 1.5 times larger than the average Noel. "Noel, Captain." Noel Captain is the boss here at the Gate of Soul Station. His monster rank is definitely C-class. It's too strong for them. Oh no, why now? Suddenly, Dae-sung's mind flashed back to Leon's words 10 minutes ago. "Do you really think it's the best move?" It was as if he'd been expecting this, but how? "Dae-sung, what should we do?" Nayeon's urgent cry made Dae-sung's heart race. "You and Nayeon, stop the kobolds in the cave, and me and Tae-hoon will deal with Noel Captain." They needed people on both sides. Above all, it would be suicidal for a D-rank to fight against a Noel Captain without any tactics. He could only hope that Tae-hoon, who was technically a novice, could hold his own with the shield. "Krah!" The Noel Captain screams and charges. Tae-hoon takes the lead and raises his shield, but his legs are shaking from the roar. He can't even block an attack like that. "Tae-hoon, wake up!" Before he could finish his sentence, a terrifying axe slammed into Tae-hoon's shield, and Tae-hoon, unable to withstand the blow, fell to the ground, losing his shield. Holy shit! The Noel Captain was about to strike Tae-hoon down, but Dae-sung moved to save Tae-hoon. Krrr! The Noel Captain lightly blocked the charge with his momentum, and the longsword was unable to penetrate the shield from the front, and he was stopped. Krrr! The Noel Captain grunted as his back snapped forward and swung his axe towards Dae-sung. Dae-sung was thrown away by the impact that his armor had barely absorbed. Ouch! Ouch! It was then that I saw the terrified Tae-hoon about to be struck by the great axe. Has the party cleared out the kobolds yet? Why hasn't the association's staff moved? His thoughts didn't last long as Dae-sung raised his shield, forgetting to even grip his sword. "Tae-hoon, step back!" Daesung's shield blocks the axe as it strikes, and his knees buckled under the unimaginable weight of the axe. Thud! But he held on, and he instinctively adjusted the angle of his shield to deflect the axe at an angle. Grr! The Gnoll captain let out an annoyed howl as his weapon slipped, and he raised his axe again. A second blow. Could I stop it? If only Tai-Hoon could come to his senses and fight back. The axe comes down, and Daesung grits his teeth. Ah! The expected clang is not heard, and Ku Daesung's pupils dilate as he stares at the Gnoll captain axe without closing his eyes the entire time. That's a good enough score. The Gnoll captain axe was still in Leon's hand, trembling in his fingers. You saved... Try again. What? Raise your shield and face him again, I say. If you have done it once, why not twice? Leon, who had let go of the axe, urged, and Ku Daesung and the Gnoll captain both shook their heads.